Hi, it's Dia. Today I'm going to color on this page. Once again, I'm going to color a green apple using Prismacolor pencils. This is an image from my up-and-coming coloring book called Everyday Magic. The first color that I'm choosing here is chartreuse. It's not the lightest color that I'm using, but it's the base color, meaning it sort of permeates all of the other colors. So sometimes I use Crayola colors as the first layer, but there is no color that's equal to this, and I decided to use the whole picture. I decided to do the whole picture in Prismacolors. And what I was trying to say is there's not a color that's exactly like this in Crayola, so I stuck with this one. Oop, now this is a little tiny antique letter opener, and I'm making little tiny marks in the paper where there would be little white spots on the apple, but the colors were so light that it didn't end up working, and I ended up going back in later on with lighter colors to give the detail of the apple. When I color the first layer of something, especially fruit, there's almost a luminous look to botanicals, whether it be fruit or vegetables or leaves. So I go very lightly with the first color. Even though it is the first color and I'm going to be doing many layers, I go especially light because I'm also trying to get a feel for where I think the highlights would be. And if I want some of the highlights to be white, rather than going over it with a gel pen, which can give a really nice effect, but in some images, I feel like the white, if the paper is just left to shine through, it looks a little bit better, and this is one of those cases. So rather than just going right in there and coloring the whole thing one color, I look around, I kind of feel the whole thing out. I'm leaving most of this in real time, but for larger areas, I will speed it up. Now you can see this little area that I just did. I left the highlights. Going back to the chartreuse, and I am not being very neat, as you can tell. This is spring green, and toward the bottom of the apple, there would be a feeling that it would be getting darker. If you would be looking at it up on the tree, if the light source is coming from the top where you can see those highlights, as the apple curves underneath, it would get darker. Now I use spring green. If you don't have Prismacolor, you can use any darker green. That color I used around the edges. It's called Sap Green Light. It's almost like a jade color with a little bit of like white sort of muted in there. The edges, I don't know, it's almost like there's a softening. So I use that on the bottom and around the edges to make the apple look curved. I'm going over some of the other colors that I already used to start to form layers, because at the end I'm going to be blending, and it looks much different once it's all blended in. Now this color, let me see, what did I use here? This is kelp green, and I added an even darker layer toward the bottom. And I'm going to also do it around the top to give, once again, an illusion of the shape of the apple. Still, I'm not being very neat, and I'm not even worried about it. I'm taking that same kelp green and I'm making sort of a triangle shape to start around the area of the stem. I'm also going a little bit in front of that area of the stem to give the illusion of a circular feel to that area that dips into the apple. As you can see in this point in the picture, there are some very dark greens now and very light greens now. And I just want to tell you, if you, like I said before, if you don't have this set, it's fine. You just have to kind of follow the same tones. So take a light green first, then go a little bit darker for the next area, and then for the shadow areas, go even darker. Some people in the shadow areas add purple and blue and even black, and that's fine. Now under here, I'm using that kelp green again. I feel like the tip of the leaf might be touching the apple, and then it might be sort of lifting up toward the back. So the shadow would be darkest in the area that's touching the apple, and it sort of fades away toward the back area. Now I'm going to take the spring green again, and I'm going to go over most of the areas, except for the extreme highlights, that I already did, since I feel like that's the base or the true color of the apple. You know, if you're going to look at it from a distance, you would probably say, oh, that apple is spring green. I mean, for lack of knowing the actual color, but in that color family. So I want that apple to feel like that color most of all. I'm not going over it completely. I'm still not pushing really hard. I'm not burnishing, but I want that color to be almost everywhere. Now I'm going to take lime peel, and I'm going to go in. Now, how do I explain this part? The apple isn't perfect, and I don't want it to look perfect because then it almost looks cartoonish, and I want this to be more realistic than cartoonish. So I want there to be flaws, I want there to be imperfections. So this lime peel color has the slightest bit of gray in it. So I'm going to add it to the areas that have shadows, and I added a little bit to the body of the apple to make it look less perfect. I added also some to that indented area in the top by the stem. Now this is grass green, and I'm going over that shadowy area again toward the bottom because I feel like it needs a little more punch or oomph, or it needs to be a little less equal to the other colors. The tone down there needs to be darker. I'm also adding some to the body just because, once again, I don't want it to appear just all flat green. Now here's some more spring green again, and I'm just blending it in. You know, some parts of this some parts of drawing or coloring are hard to explain because it's kind of partially what you like. If you want the apple to look smooth and perfect, then you should absolutely do it. And I just got finished saying, oh, you don't want it to look perfect, but maybe you do. So you have to take everything that you hear and learn and take what you want from it. So for me, I like the idea of it looking imperfect and maybe a little blue or a little too green. That's fine with me because it's a little bit different, and I like that. Now I have a lot of layers on this apple already, and it looks pretty good, but it looks a little rough. So I decided to take the white Prismacolor and start to go over. I'm not completely burnishing at this part, but I'm pushing a little harder than I had been. And you can see how nice the colors start to blend, and you can start to see how all those layers start to pay off. So now the apple starts to look smoother and shinier, and all those colors start to blend in, and they start to look, well, not they, but the whole thing starts to come together. I even went over those white spots because although when you use a white pencil to blend, it doesn't pull the color all over the place, but it does soften those edges up. So the highlights look a little more realistic. Now the other thing that the white pencil does, is make all the colors look softer. So I'm going in again with some of the colors. Now this is Celadon green, and I thought that color was absolutely perfect for the shadows because it's almost like the color that the darker green turns into if it's diluted. And here I come with the spring green again. Like I said, the white kind of mutes things. So I went over, not perfectly and not everything, but I went over a lot of the apple once again with the spring green. I didn't want it to look too muted because the green of those apples is so, what's the word? Not muted. It's crisp. It's very, very bold, even though it's a soft color. And I want it to appear that way in this image. So I used burnt ochre for the left side. Is that burnt ochre? Hold on. Yes, burnt ochre for the left side of the stem because that's the lighter, almost reddish brown. And I thought that the sun would be hitting it, and that would be the lighter side of the stem. And then I used sepia for the right side of the stem. Although it's not really in the shadow, it's not perfectly in the light. And it's sort of a darker version of that burnt ochre. Well, guess what color that is? Spring green again. And then some kelp green once again on the bottom. And I do this often. I go back and forth if I think something needs to be darker or more shadowy or more noticeable or yeah, whatever the case may be. Don't be afraid to go back and forth. I know I've said it a million times, but if you don't like it, it's probably just not done. I'm going in again with the kelp in that one little area of the shadow. Make it a little more bold. And I was thinking for 2 seconds there, do I do the leaf, but then I'll have another 2-hour video. And you can see that I'm drawing lines there and I'm kind of curving them because it would be the shape of the apple. I'm trying to follow the shape that the apple would naturally curve. And sometimes when you first do things, you think you screw up and it looks terrible and there's an extra line. Don't worry about it. You can probably fix it. And I just drew with that same color another line over on the right, and that would be the shadow from the stem. Now I decided again that the apple's pretty, but I want more layers to it. So I'm taking the side of the pencil with the grass green color actually, and going very lightly over certain areas that I felt wouldn't be as green apple green. I'm also making some fine details that you might not be able to see in this picture. I'll see if I can show you at the very end. Maybe I'll bring it closer to the camera. Once again, some more lines in the direction of the apple curve. I don't often use Prismacolors for an entire picture because they are so soft. And as I was thinking about that, I thought, I wonder if they could blend with a paintbrush. And they can to a point, but not enough to get rid of all of the lines, in my opinion. Some people might love it that way, and it does give it character, and it does give it sort of a stylized effect. What is this color? Let's see. This is yellow chartreuse. And I'm going in to make little light details like you would see on an apple. I don't know what those dots are, but that's what I tried to do at the beginning with that little envelope opener. But it didn't really work. And I think that the pencil density of the Prismacolors is so thick and creamy that it just filled it right in. Some grass green. At this point, I'm adding what I think are necessary details to make me like the image. They might not be exactly the same thing that you would do. I'm going over a little bit of that highlight area because I almost felt like it was too light and you couldn't notice the highlights enough. This is Celadon green. Like I said before, the edges have this odd muted effect. I think it lends itself to the curved impression of the drawing, so I decided to add it to the top area too, where it looked like it would be curving in toward the stem. Oop. This is grass green again. That little area would be shadowed headed toward the back. Going over the shadow once again. I think in the next video I will do that leaf because I think the leaf would be similar in color to the shadows and the apple. So I want to show you what it would be like to make the leaf stand out with some highlights and some interesting edges. Now this is the yellow chartreuse. I'm just doing some blending and I'm being careful around that stem because the apple is very light. Although there's a lot of colors there, if you nick those browns, it'll be in your green apple. And not that that would be the end of the world because a lot of green apples have reddish areas, brownish areas, but for this one I wanted it to be green. So for the very end, I took Prismacolor white once more, and I went over the entire thing and I pushed really hard. I burnished it. I wanted it to look shiny and pretty and glossy like an apple would on a tree. So I hope you liked this video. I hope if you did, you will either give me a thumbs up or subscribe or even give me a like. Once again, I'm so happy that you're watching because I like doing these videos for you so much. Thank you again, and I will see you all in the next video. Thank you. Bye. Ooh, and before I forget, to anybody who watched through to now, if there's anything that you would like to see, please feel free to tell me what it is in the comments. Thank you. Bye.